All right, everyone. So this is Andrew with Andrew Peche Photography, and we're going to get right in here and look at this issue, crop versus full frame for real estate photography. All right. So the first thing you have to talk about when you talk about this is obviously what is your kind of conditions you're shooting under for your, your average everyday shoot or pretty much all your shoots, right? And so I'm just going to walk through, how we normally shoot. And, we're on a tripod, for example. I mean, at least if you're shooting how I shoot, you're on a tripod. You're at the lens sweet spot, f8, give or take a little bit. You're at low ISOs because you're on the tripod, right? And you also have the ability to add, nice fill light into your shadows. Just, sometimes all you need is a touch. And this really helps us in those shadowy areas for interiors. Exteriors are usually lit up by the sun, right? And, we can usually push and pull those even in the shadows with our raw files. So I feel like the take home point, the conditions we shoot under are almost ideal. Okay, so for cameras, and you're not really able to notice the difference between the crop and full frame sensors under these really ideal conditions, all right? Because we have lighting, we have, we're on a tripod, low ISOs, all right? So under the conditions that we generally shoot under, full frame, the advantages of full frame, however small those are being pretty much mitigated in my opinion, especially when we talk about how our clients are looking at the images, which is just, we send them and they're just looking at them, our 3,000 pixel images or whatever it might happen to be. They're not really zooming in. Okay, we'll get into that a little more later, but that's a important consideration. Okay, photographers like to zoom into their photos, but clients really don't do that. All right, so that's an important point. So one of the points I'm going to bring up right at the start here is, you have this ability very easily to just type in on Google, right? Like crop versus full frame image comparisons. And especially if you're talking about under these conditions, like low ISOs and all this stuff up here, there aren't any real, like, you can't see two images, one from a crop and one from a full frame next to each other and say, wow, that one's obviously full frame and that one's obviously crop. It's horrible. The images are going to look the same, okay? So I don't know. It's just I'm laughing a little because sometimes I don't know why there's such an argument about it, because if there was, I just feel like you'd be able to easily see these examples on the internet about how, a crop sensor is just totally has less quality than a full frame image, okay? But you don't see that really. You see these people kind of zooming in to like little areas on their photos to even find a difference, and that's just kind of ridiculous in the first place, in my opinion, all right? So you don't find these differences easily or at all on the internet. So what does that tell you, So I think that kind of settles the argument right there, all right? But we're going to keep going on and we'll see what else we got here. So are you actually gaining anything by moving full frame? So the kind of base, most important question you need to ask yourself is, are you gaining clients by going full frame? Because that's kind of what our entire, we're photographers, we're in business. That's, the whole point, are we gaining a certain segment of our clients going full frame? I think that's a very important question, the important question, all right? And we're not, okay? We're not getting clients because we have a full frame camera. Nobody's getting a client because somebody sees a picture and says, oh, that must be a full frame, I'm going to, hire him. That's just not happening, okay? You're not gaining clients by going full frame. Just get it in your head, you're not, all right? Clients are never going to drop you because you're shooting crop, and you're never going to get a client because you're shooting full frame, all right? Just, this is that simple. You're just not. Never. So, like I was mentioning before, when you compare images, if you're kind of getting into this, realm of you might want to go full frame or whatever, when you look at images yourself, make sure you're looking images like your clients do, okay? That's, should be the basis of how you're deciding things. So if you'll notice here, I just have a little example of what I'm talking about. You take this image. This is how you look at it. You put it on your full, a full screen. That's how one of your clients may look at it, right? Your full image on a light box on the internet or whatever. But what I'd say to not do is zoom into a little piece of the photo and try and see if there's something back there. Okay, that's just nobody's doing that. Okay, so you don't need to do that. You just compare images with one another as you're zoomed out, just as your clients would. Okay, that's how my advice would go to you. So could we be gaining anything else by going full frame? Well, there's obviously tilt shift lenses. All right, so and that would be something more up to you. If you really want a tilt shift lens, then this is something maybe you can consider going full frame. There are adapters that you can put onto a crop sensor and use a tilt shift lens. And there's also ways to simulate a tilt shift lens with your crop sensor. Okay, I have YouTube videos up about that if you're interested in that, but that's kind of my statements on that. You can simulate it, and there's ways to actually use a tilt shift lens on. So I mean, it's not that big of a deal to me anyway. And maybe this is in the wrong section, but we're actually portrait photographers want less depth of field, right? But we actually, as interiors photographers, want more depth of field. So when I ask, are you gaining anything by going full frame? You're actually losing depth of field when you go full frame. So you're actually losing something, all right? So you're gonna have to stop down a little bit more on your full frame camera to get an equal amount of depth of field as you would on a crop sensor. Does that make sense? So we're getting more image with a full frame sensor, but at the cost of that depth of field. So I hope that makes sense. Just keep in mind there's a disadvantage when it comes to depth of field with full frame cameras, all right? So one question that might pop in your head, well, why is there a debate then? What's going on? Well, I don't know really, but I have a few guesses. Historically, full frame glass was just blowing crop glass away, all right? So that's very important, and all the best photographers, of course, wanted that great glass, So that's definitely a reason that, and humans are kind of like this, where they'll get, an idea in their heads, and then, of course, it's going to just, the whole momentum and stuff, it's just going to stay there, all right? That idea is just going to stay there, all right? So, because what's happening is crop is getting so much better relative to full frame, but people are having these sort of historical ideas of how much better full frame equipment was, but it's not the case as much anymore, okay? So as you'll see now, guess what's going on? Crop glass is great now, okay? So we have these examples such as the Sigma 18 to 35, which is top notch, and the 50 to 100 Sigma, which is top notch, like top notch glass. We're not talking almost as good as full frame glass. No, it's top notch. Okay, so this is really good stuff, and you can put it's designed for crop sensors. All right, you have stuff like the Tokena 14 to 20, which again is top notch glass. I would say just up there with anything being produced, and you also have these great lenses, the Token 11 to 16, 11 to 20. The point is, there's just some great choices out there. There's also a new Tamron 10 to 24, which I've personally had some experience with. It's amazing, all right? And I would say the ones I've listed in red here, you're definitely not losing anything at all by being a crop sensor shooter relative to the best full frame glass, okay? So that's why I highlighted those. They're that good, okay, the lenses. All right, so this argument about full frame glass is kind of not around anymore, in my opinion, or it shouldn't be. All right, so that was one reason why there was, a debate, okay? In the past, there was a lot bigger gap between crop and full frame. And like I said, the whole objects tend to stay in motion. That's kind of like a physics law, well, in our minds, ideas stay in motion too. So people just thought this full frame equipment was so much better, and it's kind of continuing in our minds, okay? So, but what's happening is the crop and full frame are so close now, And I'm going to get into DxO and just sort of go over this visually with you guys, okay? So we're just going to jump in there real quick, all right? And I'll see you there. All right, so we're here at DxO Mark, and I've pulled up two tabs here, and one is for more of the historical comparison between crop and full frame. This is about 10 years ago, a Nikon D40X and a Nikon D700. So this is the history, okay? And I have a tab with the current day. I put a couple crop sensors in here, D500 and a D7200. And this is one of Nikon's kind of current full frame, you know, top of the line cameras, all right? So we're just gonna go back in time, comparing it to the current, what's going on for a few of these categories, okay? So going back in time a little bit, you'll see that the noise was quite a bit better. In you know, try and pay attention to how much different they actually are from one another. So the D40X, you know, we're talking, so this is coming in at 34.4, and the Nikon D700 was coming in at 41, so that might be a good 6 or 7 or so points difference, okay? So the point is, back then, when photographers are looking at their samples, they're saying this D40X, oh, the D700, it's looking quite a bit better to them, okay? Because, I mean, you might not even have to zoom in so much, like I was saying, to see this difference right here, because it's quite a bit different, right? And so we'll move more to the current day scenario. And these down here are the crop sensors, and this is the D750. As you can see, the gap between the systems is narrowed quite significantly. Okay, so we're getting 42.5 or thereabouts, and we're getting 44, almost 45 there. So a couple points difference, you know, give or take. So it's quite different than what we're seeing historically, okay? So, and like I was making the point before, people kind of had this in their minds when the, you know, digital DSLRs were first coming out. They kind of had this stuff in their minds, and I think that momentum has carried over, but it's really not the case anymore, okay? We're going to just check out dynamic range now. And so this is, again, the historical data. And as you can see, the D40X is, let's just say, a stop, okay, even though it might be a little bit more than that, the area where we're shooting, about a stop difference between crop and full frame, okay? And let's move to the current day scenarios. So kind of where we're shooting, low ISOs, I would just call this a wash, all right? So they're about the same now, okay? So again, we're seeing that difference where, you know, 10 years ago, stuff was better, quite a bit better in the full frame realm, okay? But it's not true anymore, all right? And why don't we just check one more of these out? This is like, I guess you could call it the number of tones you could see, like the color gradations. So again, quite a bit of a difference between the historical D40X and then the Nikon D700, maybe let's say 7.8. So this is, so maybe a point or a point and a half of difference there, somewhere along those lines. I'm not doing the math. And the current day cameras, let's just call it, you know, very close, okay, a lot closer than before. So take home point, crop versus full frame there used to be quite a gap. Nowadays, it's, you know, they're comparable, okay? They're very close to each other. Stuff that you're not even really able to see if you're looking at the images like our clients do, all right? The last point I'll talk about is people tend to shoot under varying conditions, and of course, you know, all these people are going to have different reports, and you know, full frame cameras are quite a bit better if you're taking pictures in a very, you know, shadowy room in a wedding situation when people are moving around and you need high ISOs and stuff like this. And of course, people are reporting these results. Oh, look at this full frame result that I have, you know, and that's going to kind of get ingrained into everyone's head. But, you know, the point being, other photographers are able to take care of the marginally better quality they're getting on their full frame sensors, okay? As interiors photographers, we're not as much able to take advantage of that, okay? Because like I said, laid out at the start, we're, you know, shooting on a tripod, high ISOs, we're able to light our subjects aren't moving around, okay? For all these reasons, you know, the the full frame cameras have kind of gained an advantage in people's minds, but depending on what you're shooting, there's not really an advantage there, in my opinion. Okay. So what do we really lose by what do we really lose by not shooting FX? All right. So a full frame sensor, quote unquote, helps the glass, you know, because there's a larger sensor, so the glass doesn't have to squash that, you know, for lack of a better term, squash the image you're trying to make onto the sensor, okay, because the sensor is larger. All right. So, and you know, so you're asking less of your optics, and you know, in turn that would give you a little bit better optical quality, right? Because you're not having to make this great glass, all right, like a crop camera would. They might have to engineer the glass a little bit better to get as clear a result, okay? But at the same time, we lose a little depth of field when we go to the full frame system, which, as we were talking about earlier, okay? So we do lose a little bit of the frame, and that did help the glass a little, okay? And of course, we talked a little about losing the ability to shoot with the tilt shift lenses, all right? But there are workarounds for that, but you know, you're gonna have to kind of decide. My opinion is, if you're watching this video, you probably don't need a tilt shift lens, so you can watch some of my other videos for that and how to simulate one, or you know, you can just also, you know, there's adapters you can get if you really wanted to shoot with a tilt shift lens on a crop sensor, all right? So just to sum everything up, I really want to see these examples where full frame images are outperforming crop sensors on the internet. I mean, I just want to see them. I want to see one on the left, one on the right, and I want to go, wow, look at that. That I want to buy full frame, you know, but it's not happening. Another experiment I would love is if somebody shot 10 or so images on a full frame and 10 or so on a crop sensor, and let's just say we were able to get all the you know, all the variables equal, like the lens quality and stuff, which would be hard to do. But if you took those 10 images crop and 10 full frame and put them in front of some of these full frame snobs, I guarantee you they wouldn't be able to pick 10 out of 10. I just guarantee you. Okay, so that would tell you right there that, you know, they're comparable, they're equal. Okay. You're never going to lose a client because you shot crop, so just get that out of your head. It's great. You're not going to be losing clients because you quote unquote aren't using professional equipment, okay? That's ridiculous. Crop sensor bodies are totally professional, all right? Crop sensor glass, I worded it, already matches full frame glass because I think the direction we're going is that the crop glass is getting so good, and I think it's going to continue that way. All right, we're going to get more and more options, and I think it's already there. It's already, you know, great. I think the options are already at the point where we have the options that match full frame glass, okay, in my opinion. So we're not losing anything there. And, you know, I think in general, you could say you're more or less doubling your camera and lens investment if you go full frame. That might be a little under or over on that, whatever, you know, you find, but there's nothing you're really getting in return, in my opinion. You know, you maybe very little, you could say, okay? And if one day you need it, okay, you're gonna go have to buy it, right? And that day will come, all right? So you're gonna know that point. But at this point, I just think if you're watching this video, you're gonna be fine with that crop sensor glass and that crop sensors, all right? So just before we leave here, I've got a course if you're interested in this type of photography. It's at my website at petchephoto.com. So just drop by if you feel like it. And the course is under this One Light tutorial tab right here. All right. And please do subscribe if you're interested in the videos. And I appreciate your interest very much. And I'll see you for the next one. All right. Bye-bye.